Hi, Alan Schimmel here of DevOps.com here at Jenkins World, day 2. And our first guest today is Manish Mathuria.
That's correct.
We did it. Manish is CTO of Infostretch, and they're a big player here at Jenkins World this year. And Manish, first of all, welcome. I think this is the first time DevOps.com has interviewed Infostretch. Can you give our listeners a little bit of background? Who is Infostretch? What do you do?
So Infostretch is a services company, Alan.
Uh-huh.
We are about 800 people strong.
Wow.
Our headquarters is right here in Santa Clara, walking distance from here.
That's convenient.
We largely focus in 3 main areas. Quality engineering, optimizing quality and making everything automated is the biggest part.
Okay.
We also do a whole bunch of front-end development around digital technologies. So we do mobile apps as part of that,
You do?
around responsive design, anything that goes more front-end as opposed to, so more around systems of engagement. And the third thing that we, by extension, we got drawn into is this whole CI/CD. So we have been very active in it for past 3 years or so, doing, CI/CD, DevOps, and a bunch of activities around that.
And who's sort of your typical customer?
Yeah, so, being in the Valley, we have definitely a big part of our customers are really kind of well-funded growth companies, right? So they can be the startups getting into the growth phase. For anybody whose quality and scale is important, right?
Got it.
The second part is, second segment, I would say, of our customers are, the enterprise organization. So broadly, Fortune 1000, some of the big companies in the Valley, in healthcare, financial services, retail are our customers.
So is it geographically, though headquarters are here, most of your customers are here too?
No, we have an office on the East Coast in New York.
Oh, okay.
So we have a fair bunch of customers on the East Coast. We have also an office in London, and therefore we have customers around UK, and we serve the rest of the Europe from there.
UK is just exploding.
Yeah.
So, do you have a lot of customers then who span both UK, New York, and the multiple offices?
Interestingly, our story is that we got almost pushed to start our Europe operations because our customers were looking to expand.
So you followed your customers
So we followed
there.
our customers. Now there are again use cases like that coming up where customers are expanding in Asia Pac, in Singapore, etc. And we're kind of evaluating that.
Yeah. Well, you have to go where the customers are.
You have to.
So are most of your engagements more, so is it a body shop type of engagement where they're hiring people in, or is it a project kind of engagement?
Yeah, so, most of it is some kind of an IP-led initiative, right?
Okay.
So as a company, we are very committed to building IP around which we do our projects, right? So to answer your question specifically, it is most of it is some kind of a managed activity, which typically starts from some level of strategy, right? So a typical customer would come in and say that, hey, we're looking to do DevOps or we're looking to do quality engineering, and these are our pain points. And for most of our services, we would have a maturity model along which we would help place a customer on multiple dimensions, right? So if you look at DevOps, then what is your organizational maturity? What is your CI maturity? What is your CD maturity? And then we help create a blueprint on which we advance our customers, right? So, in most enterprise scale customers, this tends to be a multiple months process where, we start through like a very localized implementation, then expand it to enterprise-wide, right? So it's very, very project-driven, very, very IP-driven. We are big committers and big believers in open source. We have released our own automation framework in open source that we and our partners use.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very technology-driven.
Understood. So you said you've been doing this CI/CD for about 3 to 4 years now.
Yeah.
And I imagine it is rapidly a high growth area of the business.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Most organizations are doing the CI in pockets, right? So you would have a particular project doing their own CI with Jenkins running under their desk, under some developer's desk, and because it's working, nobody worries about it. The day it breaks down, right, people start to kind of run helter-skelter and try to fix it. So most organizations that we come across are like in somewhat around that kind of a phase, and they are looking to mature that, right? And that's thereby we, found it very prudent and relevant to partner with CloudBees, because that's their story as well, that they
Right.
need to, we need to kind of advance these organizations to get into a level where, they take these things more seriously and look at it from the enterprise perspective, right? Have
Got
the
it.
quality of service, of higher availability, security, all those aspects of any, particularly in the CI/CD infrastructure, is becoming very relevant.
Excellent. So you brought up the partnership with CloudBees, and obviously you're here at Jenkins World.
Yeah.
And before we get into more of the partnership, I
Sure.
wanted to kind of get your thoughts on, is this the first time you've attended Jenkins World?
No, this is I mean, I've attended Jenkins World before, at least a few times. This is the second year we're having a booth here.
Booth here.
Yeah.
It's much bigger this year than
Yeah,
last year.
absolutely,
It's,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
a pretty big event. What, for our audience who probably haven't had the chance to be here, what can you tell them about the event, about Jenkins World this year so far?
Yeah, so I mean, you can see it is very widely attended. I think the concept of taking CI Jenkins, and Jenkins being the center of your CI effort, from running under your desk to making it more enterprise, is
Yes.
getting more mainstream, right? So now everybody is worried about, okay, what if my builds break down? What if my deployments break down? Because there is so much glueware that goes around this. There's so much tribal knowledge that goes around it, that unless you automate it, right, it can be a huge productivity sink.
Yes.
Right? Most people don't realize it because it's working somehow, right? But the opportunity to optimize this process and remove the tribal knowledge and make things more automated is just there, right? And it happens to be single biggest sink of time and productivity.
Sure. And I think what you just hit on there is also the driver
Yeah.
for moving from Jenkins to CloudBees,
Yeah.
right? It's one thing to use an open source tool
Right.
in pockets,
Yeah.
and but once you start getting into enterprise scalability, SLAs, uptime, and these kinds of things, that's, I think, traditionally where we see enterprises move from the open source to a open source supported commercial version, such as a CloudBees. And it's not just Jenkins CloudBees. In my time in security, we saw it with, for instance, Snort in SourceFire, or Nessus and Tenable Network Security. And
Or Red Hat.
Red Hat is the perfect example, right? Or Red Hat Enterprise Linux versus what is Fedora. We've also seen it with Puppet and Chef and some of the others here in DevOps. And speaking of some of the others here in DevOps, this leads us to a big announcement here yesterday around something called DevOps Express.
Yeah.
We spoke with a number of people yesterday. Well, we spoke with the folks from CA and a few others about DevOps Express. But why don't you give our audience, what is DevOps Express to you? What do you think it is?
Yeah.
Or how would you describe it?
Sure. So DevOps Express is basically an initiative which allows multiple organizations to come together to establish reference architectures, industry blueprints, best practices, so that an initiative that is going to take a lot of pain and a lot of effort in getting it right can be expedited, right? In general, in the marketplace, there needs to be a far less room for not learning from mistakes, right? So I mean, if it has taken us 24 months to 3 years to actually optimize what we would go and offer to our next customer, right, to the next and next customer, that should really shrink down to a matter of weeks, right? Because, or else how are we actually helping the community, and how are we helping our customers, right?
So I call that saving the idiot tax, right? So
and DevOps, if you look at it broadly, right, we talked about it yesterday as well, it is largely about glueware and change management, right?
Yep.
We need to, basically, there are so many dispersed endpoints when you look at a pipeline that goes all the way from check-in to, even forget deploying, but getting something ready for deployment. There are about 30 different touch points to different systems in there.
Right.
Right. And no one product can solve that problem, right? So, if you think about it, you can't say that, okay, Cloudbees, get in a corner and, come out with a formula that will apply to all the organizations. It requires, really a multi-party engagement, right? Including companies like us who actually can go out in the marketplace and implement these things, right, to make this successful. Yes, there can be, a lot of skepticism around, how would this all work? But I don't really see an alternative to it. It has to work. Otherwise, every customer that we go to will have the same learning process that comes from change management, creating
and the
this
same
new work.
pain and the same and the same idiot tax, right? It's that same. So I think that's a big part of it. So when we look at this DevOps Express, though, Manish, there's tool vendors, right, such as a Cloudbees, a Chef and Puppet, Blaze Meters, more of a software as a service, but tool vendors nevertheless. And then you are right now, I think anyway, the only one in the group that's more of a sort of traditional service integrator, if we will. And you and the DevOps Institute, they're training, but they're also not a tool provider. So this represents a different different outpost, a different look for the Express. Do you think we'll see more integrators join in as time goes on?
I think there is definitely a room for a lot more integrators, because, like I said, right, unlike a lot of other aspects, if you take analytics, if you take, even development or testing, right, there's a good part of it which is directly solvable by a tool. You install a tool and you configure it or you customize it and it starts working. DevOps is a different beast, right? It is very integration centric. Bulk of it is actually putting together, somebody's work process or workflow in and translating it to a code that works with these 25 different endpoints, right? Which is all System Integration Act, and I think there is room for a lot of engagement from other system integrators.
And one of the things, Manisha, that I've seen, and I've been to London and a lot in Europe as well as across the US here, haven't been to Asia as much, but is the rise of what I call DevOps integrators, this whole DevOps consulting, where so many companies, they want to do DevOps. They know they should. They almost have to compete.
Right.
They're just not sure. It's one thing, as you say, to just get a tool, right? I could take a hammer and I could bang a hammer. Knowing where to bang that hammer, knowing how to get the team to bang the hammer in the right way and in unison, is that cultural thing. How do we kick off those DevOps transformations? How do we get these people started? And I think that's still a big hurdle for many organizations today.
Right. I can tell you how we do it, right? So, first of all, we have to start from assessing where you are to where you're going. And like I said, I talked about our maturity model. We're working with Cloudbees and the community in general to kind of, make it more adaptable. So the quadrant play around, basically it's about, assessing an organization and saying, okay, you fall in this quadrant. And that's not to say in a demeaning way, but, it's like, okay, here you are. And within a particular quadrant of maturity in general around DevOps, this is your maturity, this is your capability, right? And you want to be there, and not just because everybody wants to be there, but these are the business goals around which you want to be there, right? So that's the first step, to understand, okay, where you are going. And like everything else today, it's a very dynamic world, right? Today you think you want to go there, but it needs to be continuously reassessed. So that's one part of it. And the second part of it is having a whole bunch of acceleration around it, right? So, for example, we have these pre-created pipelines, right?
Oh, okay.
They are, if you will, reference architectures
Architectures.
for the common stacks.
Mm-hmm.
So we would have one for mean stack for your Java Tomcat-based
Mm-hmm.
J2EE stack, or we would have one for iOS, one for Android. And what this is the common use. Common pipeline, right, which goes everywhere, everything from check-in to deploying it
All
into
the
the
way deployed.
marketplace, everything automated in there,
Wow.
right, with quality gates, with now none of these things we can take it and as is put it in a customer side,
No.
right? So what we have to do is that becomes an excellent tool for communication. We say, okay, look, this is how we have implemented in a reference way. Now let's talk about, okay, where this
We
needs to be tweaked
customized
for.
and right.
Exactly.
You know what? So 100 years ago, I had helped start what we called an ASP in
Yeah.
the dot-com
Yeah.
days. And we were offering hosted nodes, hosted PeopleSoft, hosted Oracle,
Right.
Onyx, no VM. Bandwidth was expensive. It was very hard. But we thought we would be able to host these out of the box. And what we discovered is never, 75, 80%. And that's the best. You always need to customize the last 15, 20%. So I understand. Manish, we've gone way over our 8 minutes. I apologize.
Right, no problem.
But we can continue this conversation maybe in a podcast or something,
Sure.
remotely.
Right.
But thank you so much for joining us today. Manish, I'm not going to say your last name.
Mathuria.
Mathuria from Infostretch, a member of the DevOps Express here at Jenkins World. Thank you for joining us.
Sure, thanks,
This
Alex.
is Alan Schimmel for DevOps.com.